Franco. However, he had complete power over the country. The however shows contrast. They hated him, but he had complete power. So I've shown the relationship between those two. The people against General Franco called themselves the Resistance. They wanted to defeat Franco's government, yet Franco was a powerful leader. Again, I'm showing the relationship with yet. Hitler, the leader of Nazi Germany, supported Franco. Mussolini was the leader of fascist Italy. On May 8, 1945, the war ended in Europe, but the Japanese fought on. I'm using the but to show a contrast. The war ended. However, nevertheless, or but, the Japanese continued to fight. The Allies, led by the Americans, ended World War II by dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The Japanese finally surrendered on August 14, 1945. The finally makes sense there because it shows that there was a length of time between May 8, 1945 and August 14th. So by using finally, I'm showing the duration of time. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and read this passage. Decide why it is difficult to follow this writer's ideas. Ask yourself, why does this passage sound awkward to me? Why does it sound odd? Why doesn't it make sense? Then come back. It's difficult to follow this writer's ideas because this writer has gone the other way. This writer has linked too many ideas. So we've looked at writers that use few transitions or no transitions, writers that use the wrong transitions. Now we're looking at a writer who uses too many transitions, sort of like the Three Bears. There are so many transitions that we have too much of a good thing. As a result, notice that transition, the transitions get in the way of the paragraph. They become obtrusive, they stick out. The writer has created something that we call a stringy sentence. That's using too many transitions to link ideas. Again, it's like a row of beads, one right after the other, or a row of bricks. They're all the same. One is not subordinate to the other. There's no relationship between them. So the writing becomes boring, the writing becomes very illogical, and very awkward. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and read the passage again. This time, find the transitions and underline them. Then come back. Here's my answer. The Carolina parakeet was the only parrot native to the eastern United States, and it had green on its back, yellow on its head, and orange on its cheeks, although the largest Carolina parakeets were 13 inches long, including their tail feathers. I found 2 transitions there, and although. The and occurs right with those words, it had green on its back. The although is right before the largest Carolina parakeets. Don't be confused by the and by orange. It had green on its back, yellow on its head, and orange on its cheeks. That you need because that is part of the items in a series. I have 3 items in that series. Green on its back, yellow on its head, orange on its cheeks. To connect those 3 items, I have to use the word and. So that's functioning differently than the ands I'm using to connect my stringy sentences. Moving on. They once lived throughout the Southeast, as far north as Virginia and as far west as Texas. Parrots are among the smartest of birds. However, Farmers thought these fruit eaters were pests, so they shot them from the skies, and the Carolina parakeet became extinct in the 1920s as a result, so all that's left are stuffed examples of this bird in museums. In this part of the paragraph, I found however, so, and, as a result, and so. So many transitions that my sentences are linked together almost, again, like a string of pearls. They just sound too stringy and too drawn out. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and read the passage again. This time decide which transitions to keep and which ones to delete. Remember to link related ideas. You may have to start and end sentences. In other words, you're not going to move any big chunks around, but you may end at this point, you may start at that point. Then come back. Here's my answer. Your answer may differ a little bit. The Carolina parakeet was the only parrot native to the eastern United States. It had green on its back, yellow on its head, and orange on its cheeks. The largest Carolina parakeets were 13 inches long, including their tail feathers. They once lived throughout the southeast, as far north as Virginia and as far west as Texas. Parrots are among the smartest of birds. However, farmers thought these fruit eaters were pests, so they shot them from the skies. The Carolina parakeet became extinct in the 1920s as a result. All that's left are stuffed examples of this bird in museums. So what have we done here? Well, we've created an interesting style by mixing short, medium, and long sentences. Remember that you're always working with your audience and your reader. What you want to do is suit your sentence length and your sentence content to your audience. So, for example, if you're writing for small children, you might use shorter sentences. If you're writing for a more adult audience, you would use longer sentences. But overall, high school, junior high school, college, when you're about that age, mixing different kinds of sentences makes for the most interesting style. So I've got the Carolina parakeet was the only parrot native to the eastern United States. Relatively short, simple sentence. It had green on its back, yellow on its head, and orange on its cheeks. The same. Then I get something interesting. Something like this. Parrots are among the smartest of birds. However, farmers thought these fruit eaters were pests, so they shot them from the skies. That's a long sentence. The long sentence becomes very interesting because it's set among the shorter sentences. A paragraph of only short sentences would be relatively tedious. A paragraph of only long sentences would be relatively tedious. But the long sentence, mixed in with the shorter sentences, creates a varied and interesting style. So when you're deciding which transitions to use, not only should you look for logic and cohesion, but you should also look to create an interesting and varied style by mixing short, medium, and long sentences. Don't just mix them like throwing spices into a pot, but decide which ideas fit together the best and which sentences would make the most sense if they were long, which sentences would make the most sense if they're short. Here's the rule that I use. In general, the more complex the idea, the simpler the sentence. The simpler the idea, the more complex the sentence you can have. Because your overall purpose is always to communicate with your audience. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and decide what's wrong with the following passage. Choose from these 3 problems. Perhaps the writer linked unrelated ideas. Maybe the writer used too many linking devices, so they became obtrusive and created what we called stringy sentences. Or maybe the writer used the wrong transition. Again, maybe the writer linked unrelated ideas, the writer used too many linking devices, or the writer used the wrong transitions. Then come back. Here's my answer. In this paragraph, the writer used too many linking devices. The linking devices, the transitions and the connections became obtrusive because there were so many of them. Remember, we call this a stringy sentence. It's really too much of a good thing. As a result, readers find it very difficult to follow the writer's ideas because everything is linked. And by linking everything, in effect, you're linking nothing because you're not showing the relationship between and among ideas. The sentences lack style. The ideas do not flow smoothly at all. So now what I would like you to do is to pause the program and rewrite this paragraph. I know you can do a better job than this writer did. What I need you to do is make the connections more logical. Then come back. Here's my answer. The Pony Express was a short but interesting chapter in American history. I like the but there. I think it makes a lot of sense. It was the creation of Alexander Major, William Waddell, and William Russell, three men who made and lost a lot of money in the Old West. All three men had business acumen and money to invest, but it was Russell who got the Pony Express off to a great start because he had the support of influential people in Washington, D.C. So now what I've done is I have the first sentence is short. The Pony Express was a short but interesting chapter in American history. It was the creation is a little bit longer. Then I get to the third sentence. It's longer still. The last sentence goes back to my shorter format. From then, it took him only 2 months to establish the Overland Mail Express. So what I've got is I've linked related ideas by using the correct transitions, and I've created a more interesting and diverse style by mixing some medium-length sentences with one relatively long sentence. This makes the paragraph a lot more interesting to read and will get your reader's attention. Another way to create unity and cohesion and logic is through repetition. And when you use repetition, you repeat things. You can repeat keywords, you can repeat phrases, you can repeat clauses, and you can repeat sounds. Keywords is obvious. You pick one word that has a lot of importance and you repeat it for unity, for logic, and for emphasis. Remember that phrases are word groups that do not have a subject or a verb. Clauses are word groups that do have a subject and a verb. They can be independent or dependent. And sounds can be any sound that you feel would make your writing more logical and more cohesive. Now be careful with this. Use repetition as a stylistic device, but don't pad your writing by just repeating things to make a word count, because then you're not using it effectively. Here's an example from Charles Dickens in A Tale of Two Cities. As I read it, I'll emphasize the repetition. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. So he takes that phrase, it was the, and he repeats it to unify his writing. Then he changes the pattern so it doesn't get boring. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period